Let's see. I don't know. Hello, Minnie. Can you hear me? Hi, Cam. Can you hear me? You can see me. Can you hear me? Oh, wow. Well, I'm here. I'd have made it here. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, Lord, I'm wore out now. I just wanted to have a discussion today. I wanted it to be live. There is no tarot reading for this live stream. It's just a discussion. And it is about, as you may have noticed, the title is Who is Your Master? And this discussion is really a discussion about the importance of the ego, or the role of the ego. And the reason why I feel like it might be important to talk about the role of the ego, what the ego is, its purpose, all those kind of things, is because when I've been interpreting astrological energy, happy Mother's Day, yes, to all the ladies, and thank you. Tono, don't take your messages back. I like them. Anywho, when I've been interpreting the astrological energies, the ego seems to be of the uttermost importance relative to our existence here on this world, or in this world, as well as our spirit, which is in our body in this physical world. And so it's just so important. Maybe I'll make it make sense by the end of this live stream. It may be a little lengthy. I'll be a little long-winded, but I just want to get this out so we can all be on the same page. As you know, I'm not a professional. I don't hold any accolades per se in any field. A couple of little minor degrees, but nothing major, especially like in psychology and metaphysics, those kind of things. Those kind of degrees or doctrines or accolades are a physical representation of our mastery over these particular arenas of life. And so I got notes, and they just everywhere. They basically out of order. And it's more or less a theory that I have that I want to share. And sharing this theory will help you be able to see things from the perspective or through the lens in which I am seeing things, seeing what life and what's taking place and where we're headed and why we're headed there overall, it has to do what I'm seeing with spirituality. So let's begin to talk about the ego. And I'll start with astrology first. And the fifth house is the house of Leo. And the fifth house we can think of the fifth house as a storage room where we keep all our memoirs of our doings, our works that we decided to partake in. Hello, Lori, Maya, hello, and happy Mother's Day to all the ladies. Even if you're not a mother, but you're a great auntie or a good best friend, you know, the kind that babysit, change diapers, we love you too, and we wish you a happy Mother's Day. Anyway, back to the fifth house of Leo. So we know that the fifth house is the storage facility that has a catalog, the detailed catalog of our works and our doings, such as, look at me, you know, Leo is center stage, look at me, I had children, look at me, I started this business, look at me, I climbed Mount Everest, etc., etc. And Leo to me, you know, is the images of the lion, brave and courageous, bold and regal, leader of the pack, that kind of thing. But the symbol of Leo to me really represents that courageous, adventurous, self-motivated spirit within us called the ego. Truly, the Leo sign is a symbol for our individual ego's self-expression into the world. If you've ever heard me speak of the ego, I almost speak of it as if it's an individual entity. And I bring that up because I want to emerge the ego, make it one being. Hello, Champagne. Happy Mother's Day to you as well. Thank you for the roses and the hearts. They are appreciated. So what do I mean by that? Well, think about it. Before we incarnated into our physical bodies, we were spirit, I'm willing to argue. And for whatever reason, we incarnated into our physical bodies, into these vessels, these flesh vessels, and became physical. So what am I trying to say? What is the ego? The ego is the link between the spirit and the physical coming together. And that link, which we call the ego, where the spirit and the physical come together, is hard to describe because it's tangible because we're in a flesh body, but it's also intangible because it has to do with the spirit. They're linked together. So that link is our ego. And our ego is directly related to a particular master. So, when I talk about this video, I'll be kind of doing the Aquarius thing, mixing stuff up. And so I'll be talking about various I think they call it psychoanalysts, such as Sigmund Freud and what's this other lady's name? Other person's name. Jane Luvinger and Erickson's um, models or theories surrounding the ego. Anyway, I'm basically going to be throwing it all in one pot because I'm trying to go somewhere with this. And where am I trying to go with this live stream? I'm trying to point out that even those psychoanalysts were dealing with spirituality or spiritual things or a spiritual concept in the physical. When Sigmund Freud was talking about the ego, the superego, and the id, he was dealing with the spiritual concept relative to physicality. And all those psychoanalysts were doing the same. It's just so interesting to me when I came up through school. Nobody let me know that they were teaching me or trying to teach me and others similarly situated next to me about spirituality and how it does dwell within the physical, the link. In this case, we're talking about the ego. Now, as I mentioned, my notes are all over the place. I just want to get this whole idea or concept or theory out that I have. And that's primary, number one, that the physical and the spiritual are linked together. And one of those manifestations is the ego. And that ego is under the authority, it willfully is under the authority of a master, which is revealed through one's choice works. All of this is important because it is relevant to the astrological energies we are up under. And so I'm going to say this to try to make it make sense. If there was truly a physical hell, if there was or is a physical heaven, wouldn't you like to know which one you are working toward moving to? It's difficult to talk about the physical and the spiritual at the same time. That's why we overlook it in this world. It's so easy. So at this point in time, there are a few biblical scriptures I like to read, and I'm not trying to convert anyone. It's just that religious doctrine was a major contributor in my life. And when I was coming through the church and sitting in the pews and hearing the pastor sing and preaching, the choir sing, I just a moment. Hello. Hi, who is this, Damone? This who? Oh, I'm gonna have to call you back shortly. This your new phone number? Thank you. I'm live, so you live with me on YouTube. So I'm gonna call you back in a short while. He said happy Mother's Day to all. So I'll hit you back up in a short while. I love you too. Bye-bye. I apologize. Didn't recognize the number and they called back. They were animate about talking to me. Just wanted to wish me and all of you ladies and aunties and besties, the diaper changers and babysitters, a wonderful and happy Mother's Day. So what was I saying? Again, if you're just coming in, I just want to make an announcement. This is a discussion. This discussion is about the subject of the ego. And in this video, I won't be doing any tarot readings. This is a platform in which you can talk to each other and share and have a moment and actually find out what the ego really is, and that it is really an entity, an essence, and it has a purpose. and how we have been overlooking it. So let me see if I can keep a little order. I was about to do something when that phone rang twice. Oh, I was going to read these scriptures. And the reason I was going to read the scriptures is because, like I was saying, when I was in the church, sitting in the pews and the pastor's preaching and the choir is singing, and I am being educated by the religious institution, it was, how can I say it? It was, the lessons were so real. I couldn't touch them. It didn't make sense. It was out there, maybe after I died. But through this new lens of astrology and through tarot and through all these various studies I'm partaking in now, I can see how those verses actually talk about us spirits in the physical body, in the physical realm. And it's not religious. It was pointing to spirituality. And I guess people, pastors, ministers, were having their sermons and discussing spirituality in the best way they could. Maybe I can make that sense, make sense too along the way as I move through this live stream. So I'm just going to read them. It's 2 at the beginning, 1 at the end. That's if I don't forget. Remember, we're dealing with the ego. And so I'm just setting the stage. Which one do I read first? Well, I'll read this one. Now, I can't see what I'm doing, so hopefully I ain't making no mess. Excuse me. So I'm going to read Revelations 3:16. Revelation 3:16. Revelations 3, chapter 3, verses 15 through 17, with a focus on verse 16. And it reads, I know your deeds. You are neither cold nor hot. How I wish you were one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spew you out of my mouth. You say, I am rich. I have grown wealthy and need nothing. But you do not realize that you are wrenched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. That's deep. That's deep. I recall that reading while sitting in the pew. Didn't make much sense to me, but now it does. And it is relative to the state of a person's ego. So let me see if I can kind of parallel or show you what I see now. And I read, it says, I know your deeds. Remember, each work that we do, when our ego expresses itself into the world, those works, those are the deeds that this scripture was talking about. It says, I know you are neither hot nor cold. You haven't even made a choice. And so I got to go in detail. I hope you really paid attention to the thumbnail I put up, because that thumbnail is a representation of an individual, in the case of the thumbnail, myself, and an angel on my shoulder whispering suggestions to me, and then a little a devilish young lady on the opposite shoulder whispering suggestions to me. And the scripture where it says you're neither hot nor cold, meaning you're not submitting yourself fully to either side, to the little angel or to the little devilish young lady. You're not submitting to either side. And that happens because you're not aware that you are being coerced, so to say. But I'll come back to that. But it's important. And it is also that interaction, spiritual interaction, which exists, is relative to the ego. Now, that's why all this is so difficult, I repeat, because we're talking about where physicality meets our spirituality. They are linked. They are merged. I call it the link, for a lack of better words. And that link will connect us directly to our divine source, whether that divine source is good or bad. And so, whoever's speaking in this verse says, how I wish you were one or the other. Make a choice. Don't be floppy. Don't flake back and forth. Because when I was saying, hey, if by chance there is a physical hell or a physical heaven, wouldn't you want to know that you were headed there or how you got there? It says, so I wish you were one or the other so that you can be aware what you are in tune with. So because you are lukewarm, going back and forth, you don't know. It says, I'm about to spew you out of my mouth. You haven't made a commitment to me, whoever me is. But we'll have to come back to that some other time. It says, you say, I am rich. I have grown wealthy and need nothing. That shows unawareness of one's state, one's possibly vulnerability, or one's arrogance. But you do not realize that you are wretched, that you toe up from the floor up. You pitiful, you're poor, you're blind, and you're naked. Meaning, each entity, the little angel or the little devil, has their, I could say, positives and negatives. They have an influence upon the state of the ego. But I'll have to make all that make sense later. And so that's the end of that particular verse, chapter, whatever you call it. So now I want to read the next one. And the next one is called, next scripture is Matthew's chapter 6. Let's see. Verses 23 through 25. And it reads, with a focus on verse 24. Anyway, this chapter reads, but if your vision is poor, your whole body will be full of darkness. You can't even see. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Focus here. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Verse 25. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Now, I'm not going to go through breaking all of that up. I am about to try to shorten this live stream up, but it's just about the focus is really on verse 24. It says you can't serve two masters. And what are the two masters that are relevant to the ego? Well, ultimately, it's a divine source master. But then there is what we're about to go into next. It's the lessons of the ego. The ego is undergoing lessons all the time, or temptations. And again, when I read from religious texts and stuff, I'm not trying to convert anyone. It's just coming to this understanding about what I was being taught, or what the lesson should have consisted of, what it should have taught me. Now I'm beginning to see through a different lens. So let's see if I can go back to this. I brought up Sigmund Freud earlier, and my focus right now will be on him and his beliefs about the ego. He believed that there was not only the ego, but that it was also the super ego. And the super ego is like the angel, molded to be politically correct, um, have morals and values. But even that super ego has a negative and positive um, charge to it. You know, you can be so righteous, or um, it's just, it can enter into a corrupt state, the super ego, where one is super governed, the choices that they make. But then there is this side that maybe is and more integrity. And that is where we have, though, again, that moral compass, and we become politically correct, and um, aware of others outside of ourselves and how they matter too. And another thing that Sigmund Freud talked about was the id, and that's the instinctual drive, the natural urges that we have that I always speak of. And that would be the little devil. But that too has a negative and positive charge. And what do I mean by negative? Well, yeah, you can impulsively do something. You can jump up, slap somebody, shoot somebody, kill somebody, hurt somebody, cuss somebody out. Uh, but that same energy that it takes to do those kind of things are also can also be harnessed and mastered under the positive charge, to be able to be motivated, to move forward, to be courageous, those kind of things. And so what am I saying? What am I saying? That the way it appears is that, remember, we have embodied into a physical body, spirit embodied into a physical body. There's a link, and that link is the ego, our own conscious decisions. But there is this influence that exists. And the influence is that little devilish entity, the super ego gone wrong, um, the super ego gone wrong, or the unbridled id. And then on the other shoulder is the little angel, and that's the super ego in integrity, as well as tamed instinctual drive. And the thing of it is, I want to talk about right now is the development of the ego in this life. Let's see. As an individual, moves out into the world from birth. Now, the development of one's ego starts at birth. But at birth, we're basically all about that id, the instinctual drive, the urge to eat, to poop, to piss, to cry. And our first interaction with the world outside of us, we know, are our parents and our siblings and things like that. And through those interactions, our ego begins to develop. That, and the ego is really the sense of one's self and individuality relative or influenced by another or outside force. So it goes from your family, then it goes into, you know, your siblings and your cousins, and then your neighbors, people in your community. Then you go to school and then preschool and then teachers. And how successful is your relationship with these others? Are you accepted? Are you appreciated? Are you acknowledged? Are you rewarded? Or are you chastised and ostracized and alienated and told you're wrong? Well, that is what helps to build one's ego. It says, or another thing that contributes to the development of the ego is, if you're capable in the course of your life of meeting life demands and or the demands of the outside world. Now that's another thing that we don't look at close, that life itself, the physical life, the entity, has its demands, natural law, those kind of things. Are we capable of sustaining ourselves? And this is one of the challenges that we meet with in this realm, is that the natural law or divine laws are trumped by man's laws and man's demands. And so we often have these inner battles. But there are people that are capable of somewhat staying in tune with like natural laws as well as to satisfy man laws. Your parents told you to go to school to be a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher. You do so. And you do so masterfully, and you get the degrees and the accolades, and you can go make the money. Then there are people that struggle to move through school or career, and then it inadvertently leads to maybe a limited income. All of these things affect our ego state, the state of our ego. So that discrepancy is important. We overlook it, but it is highly significant to the development of our ego. I just did a video the other day where I was talking about the astrological energies, and it was pointing out how we feel a certain type of way on a deep emotional and psychological level. And that state, that internal feeling, is what is I'll say the foundation of our ego. And remember, from our ego, we respond to this world. We do our works. We make our moves. We perform our deeds. So one thing I need to state here for the record is that, remember, the ego begins to be developed from birth, right after birth, shortly after birth, and continues to be developed by and through all the experiences we go through. Hello, Mel Mac, how are you? All the experiences that we go through. So that is to say that we can go under ego um, evaluation at any given time. And so the ego can, what am I saying? It can shift. It can increase, it can decrease. And that's also hand in hand with one's self-esteem and self-worth and value. It also has to do with what a person ultimately outside of themselves value. That also can fluctuate. And it's all based on a person's success in this world. And I'm not just talking about work success. I'm talking about if one is accepted. With that being said, I want to go and read from this particular site, which is www.psychologytoday.com, and is a blog and is a theory knowledge, the elements ego functioning. And so I'm just going to sporadically go through this and read. And what am I talking about here? The development of the ego itself. So, in the course of one's life, shortly after entering into this realm, the process of ego development begins. And this is so critical. It's so critical because it really goes into what's happening in our world today and the dilemmas that we are facing. But I'm jumping the gun, so I'm just going to read. Number one, the degree of insight. How can I do this? The degree of insight of an individual. Let's see if I could kind of scan. Let's see. I'm going to just read the whole thing right here, but I won't be doing it for all of them. Freud's famous dictum for psychotherapy was, where id was, let ego be. What he meant by that was the key to mental health was awareness of one's defenses, motives, and conflicts. Although history has seen Freud overestimated the power of insight, it nevertheless is the case that the most basic function of the self-consciousness is awareness of the processes that are influencing the individual. The processes that are influencing the individual. That's what I was just saying. To be aware how you as an individual have been or are being affected by life, the process, and your interaction with the outside world. Individuals with high levels of insight know how they feel, what makes them tick, when, and why they have conflicts, and what they need to feel fulfilled. Individuals with poor insight engage in more primitive psychological defenses like denial. And we're going to go into defense mechanisms of the ego. Because what is all of this about? I got to stop. What is this really asking us to do? What I'm seeing, again, it does have what maybe be a religious connotation, but it's really about tending to our spirit while in this physical world. It's taking account of who you are, the master you serve, and therefore the works you will do. You will contribute to this earth, how you would affect or influence another outside of yourself, the world at large. And understand that based on what I'm seeing, somehow, some way, eventually we all will be held accountable for our works and our deeds. And with that pressure on, coming to understand that we might just be held accountable one way or another. I don't know how that might be. I don't know if there will be a physical heaven or hell, but just say hypothetically, case, just in case it might be, that we will be held accountable one way or another. I often give a scenario of how I believe it will manifest on this earth. And that's because by saying that we can bring heaven on earth back, or we can continue to descend down into hell. But that's another video I made, and maybe one for the future. But with that pressure on, we may feel compelled to correct ourselves, to adjust ourselves, to be more humane. And if we're a person from the spirit, because remember, we're spirits in a physical body, from the spirit, really don't vibe well with being humane. They don't want to. They ain't got to. There are particular defense mechanisms. I digress. I'll come back to that later. I'll finish reading this and just do the actual developmental, what do you call them? Short, bad memory. Goodness, I wish I could get it together. And again, take me some King Cobra again. Anyway, I'm just finished reading. Psychological defenses like denial, and either are clueless about who they are or try to convince themselves they are something they are not. They are something they are not. That's deep. Who's wrote this? This is by Greg Henricks, PhD, Theory of Knowledge. His last name is spelled Henriques. Gregory. The title of this particular post is The Elements of Ego Functioning. So let me go. Number 2, the degree of agency and self-directiveness. Energetic individuals see themselves as able to control key aspects of their environment and guide their behavior with purpose. They are able to engage in self-directed behavior, effectively guiding their actions toward goals across time, can manage impulses in our resilient. I know this word, amazing. In the face of setbacks. Next one, and I didn't finish reading, I'm just doing some of the readings associated with each one, each category. And then it's the degree of the self-esteem, acceptance, and compassion. And again, this is how the ego itself is developed. And it just says the degree of self-esteem, acceptance, and compassion. Closely related to agency is the theme of self-esteem, which is the extent to which an individual respects and values themselves. And that self-value has to do with one's level of success, with one's, if a person has been accepted or not. And it creates or stabilizes the foundation underneath one's ego. Hey, you've been accepted. Hey, you've been loved. Hey, you've been cared. Hey, you've been cherished and appreciated, et cetera, et cetera. And the foundation grows stronger and stronger. But there is also, again, that something going so right, it goes wrong. It ends up in a negative charge that person becomes, in the last video I talked about, becomes narcissistic and have a sense of grandeur or self-entitlement. On to the next category, the degree of empathy with others. Ego and alters are born together. Our selves exist within interdependent networks of other people because we initially understand ourselves through the lens or mirrored others, which is the 7th house of Libra. And because our identity is very much about narrating and legitimizing our actions to others, a key aspect of ego functioning is the capacity to understand others in a complex manner. And that's going into the 8th house of Scorpio. The next category is the degree of integration, purpose, thematic coherence. The question here is the extent to which the ego has a meta-narrative position that links the parts together into a coherent story. Let's see. They gave more of an example for this one, but it's about basically the 8th house energy of Scorpio, where you come together with another and how you interact and engage with each other. You have purpose, hopefully, or you mirror each other, those kind of things. And how successful is that? The next category, number 6, is the degree of philosophical and moral development. I'm going to read that one because I don't know where they about to go with it, but I know where I'm about to go with it. To develop a complicated narrative of the self, one that has purpose and coherence, one must place that in the context of the whole world. Our religious beliefs, our primary philosophical beliefs, our morals are cultivated initially from our family, our immediate family, our mothers and fathers, our ancestral line, and are safeguarded with the patriarchal system. It is defended fiercely. And what am I saying? That You may be born into a family that has a particular belief system or moral, a particular morality, and it doesn't mean that it's right. But you can hold on to that your whole life, never expand your horizon like through the ninth house of Sagittarius in order to debunk some things that may not be correct. And those beliefs and those philosophies are also what create the foundation underneath the ego. If you've if your philosophical views, if your family's morals and values that you've been taught through your family and your upbringing have never been debunked, then you feel confident. I talked about confidence and security. You feel confident and secure when none of those things have been debunked in any way. They haven't let you down. Again, it can go into an overdrive in which that that component ends up having a negative charge, but we'll talk about that later. I make it make sense later. And then it is also about have you been successfully able to integrate, to interact with others, to have a shared purpose with others, to move and fulfill one's goals and ambitions, or is it constantly a fight or an argument? All of this affects a person's sense of well-being in this earth, in this world, in this life. Again, we're talking about the building of the foundation of the ego and how it is sustained, or how it is corrupted, or has some form of faults. What is an example of an ego's foundation that has faults? A person that has come up in a family in which they were alienated, told no, shut up, not realized, not acknowledged. They go to school, they fail, they have questions, they need help, and there was never any help there, and on and on. Then relationships that haven't been successful. All of this is creating thoughts and cracks and weaknesses within the foundation underneath the ego, the self-esteem. You can think of it as a ring right at the neck of the ego. Okay, well, that was the end of his insert, so I'm appreciative of that. And so I want to go on and talk about I got so much here. I'm about to do her in a minute. Okay. I already went over how the ego development starts at birth and continues throughout life. So we can evaluate the state of the ego at any given time period of an individual's life. And that we'd be looking at the influence of life relative to ourselves. And we're actually looking at the foundation that holds up the esteem as well as the ego. Okay, and then when dealing with astrology, it's something like this. Remember, I was talking about how we start off as a spiritual being and we incarnate into the physical body, and it's this link. That link is what I am coining as the ego, and that is our like plug into whatever divine source we are most susceptible to be in line with. And so another thing I want to bring up is still religious based. In the Bible, it talked about how Jesus Christ was tempted in the wilderness. And that also seems to play into the ego development. The same thing all I was just talking about. And so what am I doing? I talk about a lot of different things. And I try to keep it straight. But what I am doing is consistently paralleling all of the things that we've been introduced to during the course of our lifetime. We think that these things are separate. And they're actually not. They are different stories or fairy tales or folklores or iconographies, whatever the case is. They're about, many of them are about the same thing, as I just mentioned. The story of where Jesus Christ is supposed to be in the wilderness and being tempted by Satan. Remember, I'm dealing with the ego. What wilderness was Jesus, who was supposed to be an ascended person, in? He was in the flesh, and the devil was tempting him. The little angel and demon on the shoulder. It's the same concept, is what I'm trying to point out. And so let's talk a little bit more about, because I'm going all off, about the development of the ego. Then we're going to move on and talk about how the ego defends itself as well. So remember, I was saying as the ego can be evaluated at any particular point in time in a person's life, because after we get here, after we exit the womb and enter into this realm, our ego development begins shortly after that and continues throughout our life. Remember, it can fluctuate depending on the experiences that we have and the impact those experiences have had upon us in this physical realm. But what it's really all about is about the impact it's having on your soul, your spirit, and ultimately your soul. That's what it's really all about, at least from what I'm picking up. So you live your life, you get a little older. Let me ask you a question. Let me pose some questions of possibilities, possible scenarios that can affect and influence a person's, the foundation of their ego alone in the course of their life. How about your health and the efficiency of your body? At any given time, you look, if you're healthy or if you're ill, that affects the foundation of the ego. Or if a person is handicapped, or if they are able-bodied, incapable. Or how about this? What about, and I already brought it up, your relationship with your immediate family, your friends, your neighbors? And have you been acknowledged, appreciated, valued? Have you have you been ridiculed and ostracized and alienated? I talked about that a little earlier. All of these things through the course of one's life affects and influences one's ego, the development of one's ego. Mm. Mm. Now, the ego. Give me just a moment. Mm. I guess at this point in time, I'll read a little bit from another entry that is in Wikipedia, and it is Jane Loveger, um, theories on the stages of ego development based on Erickson's psychological model. So where is that one? Oh, I'm there already. And she theorizes that there are 9 concrete stages in the development of the ego. She even pushes to a possible 10. The first stage is the pre-social stage, and that's from the moment you pop out the womb and you aren't able to identify how does it go? I don't want to read through that because I just want to make some points. I just want to make some points. Okay, the pre-social stage is from early infancy, that babies do not have an ego because they cannot differentiate differentiate itself from the world or non-self. Thereafter begins the process of beginning the association of outer objects and the influence to themselves. Then there is the impulsive stage, in which one begins to asserts growing, asserts, there is an asserting growing sense of self and views the world in egocentric terms, preoccupied with bodily impulses, age appropriate sexual impulses, aggressive ones. All these things, I'm bringing up all this because the ego, why do we just not acknowledge it? Why don't we pay it attention? Because all of this stuff that we experience in life is creating the foundation, the body of the ego. And then there is the impulse affirms the sense of self. Children's need and feelings are expressed mostly in bodily modes. Then there's the self-protective stage. It's the first step to self-control. And so imagine, I just want to use that as an example of like when I worked in a daycare, and some children mastered self-protectiveness or self-control early, where there were others that seemed to have were delayed and somewhat stuck in the impulsive stage. And for a parent, a guardian, an overseer, a teacher to be harsh with a child that's between like 3 and 4, 3 and 5, could be experienced by the child as rejection. Now, rejection is just a word to describe a feeling, to be rejected, to feel inadequate. That is a building block to the foundation of the body of the ego. That child would continue to carry that sense of rejection throughout their life. And that sense of rejection is what they may work through, how they would view themselves, how they will interact with another. It is possible that in the course of that child's life, for example, that sense of rejection or being inferior in some way could be replaced by or through another life experience that's more powerful and has more impact upon them. And I bring that up because I'm not trying to be a therapist or a teacher, but I'm trying to go somewhere with this. I know I'm long-winded, but just ride with me. Anyway, then the next stage is the conformist stage, and that's basically going with socially approved norms. And then it's the self-awareness, being able to identify yourself from others and be able to identify the self in various situations. And then it's this conscientious stage of goals and ideals, acknowledged awareness of responsibility with guilt. In this stage, it comes manners. Let's see what else. There's a few more. And then I'm going to try to wrap this up. I talked so much, I think I might have forgot where I was going. Then it's individualistic. Then it's autonomous. And then it's integrated. And then the possible 10th is where one is able to, and this is a highly evolved person, is to be able to intermingle in the intermingling of different states of consciousness, thinking in time cycles and historical dimensions, full acceptance of difference in people as they are. And that's a whole nother level to the development of the ego. Now let me see if I can bring this home and make all that rambling make sense. Title of this live stream: Who is your master? What master am I talking about? Well, traditionally it's known as God or the devil. Who is your master? Who are you linked in with? We incarnated into this, our spirits incarnated into the soul, incarnated into this body, this physical flesh, and it merged, blended. They blended with each other. And that link right there, one of the links is called the ego. Now, sits on your shoulders, the little devil and the little angel whispering suggestions about how to respond and what to do and what to work on, what your deeds should be, what choices you should make. Now, understand that your works are a physical manifestation of who you are from the inside. Talking about the ego and so I don't know. Yeah, I talked about the feelings because the feelings, all these things are interconnected and they are of the uttermost importance. Why are they of the uttermost importance? Because it is about our souls. We are only in these physical vessels just a short time. It is ultimately about our soul. One of our downfalls is we think in the physical and we don't even acknowledge that our soul is eternal. So anyway, why am I talking about this? Because I'm going deeper than what the astrological energy talks of, but it definitely seems relative. The astrology, as well as the tarot, has to do with this physical realm. But because we are actual spiritual beings in a physical body, even the astrology and the tarot has a spiritual undertone. And so it's so important at this point in time that humanity is awakening, we're becoming enlightened, we're beginning to see that we're able to understand that physicality is one thing, spirituality is another. Our time here in this physical world is one thing, eternal is another. And we have to come to understand, I believe it's important for us to understand that or how all of these things are coming into play, how they are intermingled, and for what purpose. So, as I mentioned early in this video, I'm about to close up. I'm trying to figure out how I can kick the field goal. When I did the astrological reading for June of 2018, it was speaking of how it was our who, me, yours, and every individual in humanity's time to be aware of our emotional constitution, all of that stuff that I've talked about and rambled about in the course of this live stream, all those things, and how it has affected us and how we really feel, because how we feel, all of that affects our self-esteem, which is like the ring to the head of, or the ring, the neck ring to the ego, and how from there we make our decisions, we perform our deeds in this world. And so it was saying that we're going to be aware of what our triggers are, I say, what has been hidden within that is spilling out into the world that will bring into existence our current experiences and those soon to come. It is all about what's in us that must come out, and how we will move to break away from like faded in social entanglements, people or in situations that can't help us move forward, and to alleviate the wound if we have a wound, or to or the person can't help us carry our uh, the responsibilities and duties to fulfill our goals or ambitions in life. It also talked about how there are people that are in this world that, although this enlightenment is happening for all, they won't embrace it and use it to their benefit. And they are susceptible because life is going to continue to uh, be created. But then there are others that are going to be highly aware and able to use this one up to further advance them, to create conscious connections, helpful connections that will be lucrative and beneficial to them. Um, all the people that are involved in that coming together on a common cause or purpose or goal. Now, I always talk about the individual versus the global. So again, all of this stuff is being, and all of this stuff has been introduced to us in the course of our lifetime. Some in home, some in church, some in school, some in the neighborhood, some here. But together, not all at one time. Why? Because it's too much. But it is my belief that's how we have to come to understand it. That is all, again, intricately linked together. And it is our reality. And our reality is like a overlap or screensavers for the spirituality that is, the system is still up and running and functioning and needs to be tended to. Anywho, back to the ego and I'll say the emotional foundation that has created the foundation of the ego and the actual body or form of the ego. The whispers of egotism, of having an overabundance, of arrogance, of corruptible mastery over this world is going to manifest into this world. In another video, I talked about supremacy and a sense of entitlement. It's going to manifest into this world soon and very soon, based on the interpretation of the stars for June 2018. And then there are the others that are wounded, that have the faults and the cracks down in their foundation. Life has been a ridiculous roller coaster ride. They can't catch a break. They feel like the odds are stacked against them. And it's this catch. Remember, everything has its negative and positive charge. There are people that go through, I would say, a grotesque life experience, one way or another. Some still are able to move in righteousness or integrity, with respect for themselves as well as for others, even through the difficulty. Which master do you serve? And then there are others that go through these difficulties and hard times. What am I talking about right now? I'm talking about the little angel and then demon that's on our shoulders, whispering suggestions in our ear. Here are the potential outcomes. I've gone through the life and it's been so challenging. And they have been tempted, we can say, by the devil. And they become brutish and hard and unforgiving and unyielding, murderous, suicide, etc., etc. Now, ultimately, what is about, I got to read this. Let me go to this other side where we have this level of mastery, of expertise, of professionalism, corrupted that sense of entitlement, of narcissistic energy, and supremacy on that side. But then there are others that have mastered, but they understand that their mastery is that gift was cultivated for the purpose of advancing humanity, and they share, and they eagerly share, and they battle to be a resistance against those that feel entitled. Oh, excuse me, peppermint. So these are the outcomes of the eagle works. Harder to do than I thought it would be. Who is your master? Well, with all that said, the time is coming both in the physical as well as spiritually. But I know most of us only understand the physical, but the time is coming based on the astrological interpretation that I did yesterday, I think it was, that we're going to go into action. Life will be lived out as hid in the subconscious. That which was seen within is spilling out. So some of the outcomes I use as examples, and the whole thing is, do we want, in the physical, heaven on this earth, or do we want hell on this earth? We are currently on a course, it seems, more or less to hell. But we have the option to have heaven on earth. And that I'm not talking about from a spiritual standpoint or a religious standpoint. I'm talking about true facts. The reality of this matrix can be either a heaven state or a hell state. But then there is the spiritual undertone as well, but you yourself can parallel. So, with our internal continents spewing out, creating our current and upcoming life experiences, they always been pending. Now it's coming out. People are ready, and they are aware of what needs to be done to get things going. Let me read this final verse. Yep, I'm at the closing of this live stream. Y'all just rode the wave with me. I appreciate it. Again, this reading is not to try to convert anyone, just making things make sense, looking back through the filters that I was introduced to younger and seeing how looking through the current filters of what I'm studying now, I can see it from a different perspective. And it's all relative. Anyway, I'm about to read Matthew chapter 7, verses 12 through 14. And it reads, in everything, then, do to others as you would have them do to you. For this is the essence of the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the way that leads to life, and only a few find it. Remember, the emphasis is on verse 13, which says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. That scripture right there really talks to me about how in this world there is a real narrow path in order to bring heaven back upon this earth. I spoke earlier in this live stream about natural laws and things like that, but how natural laws are secondary and trumped by man's laws and demands. But this is a real narrow path. And at this point in time, remember the astrological energies say now we are going to be aware what was inside, what was hidden. So we can see the source of our choices, the source of where we are choosing to go individually and collectively. Collectively, Based on our current course of action, we're heading through the wide gate. The wide gate. And I'm not ministering. I'm just looking through these filters. It makes sense. And it all goes together. Anyway, we're entering through this wide gate that leads to destruction. And many entered through it. But only a few can find the narrow gate, only the few. And we need the majority to find that narrow gate of existence, of living, of progressing forward in order to bring us a heavenly state, a workable state, a pleasing, pleasurable state back to this earth. Not only for us, but those in the future. But why did I bring that particular scripture up? It's because in order to get through that narrow gate to see it and to humble ourselves and be willing to go through that narrow gate, basically we can start our research with the natural laws to figure out how to get through that particular gate. And that gate will lead us to a heavenly state on earth. Now, I'm just talking about in the physical, in the real life matrix. I ain't talking about the spiritual part of it, but you can directly parallel it. Is that there has to be something that happens, a repentance, I'll say. See, it's hard talking about this stuff, not using religious terms, because repentance of what? One's works. As I said, there are those that have the sense of entitlement and will move forward and create realities in this world based on their sense of entitlement. There are those that have been deeply and grievously wounded in this life, and they aren't healing, they aren't healed, they're not trying to be healed, and they will create and bring entities into this physical world, experiences into this physical world. Repentance. Turn back from your wicked ways, he used to say when I was sitting in the pews and listening to the pastor sing in the choir preach. I just want to give an example of a person that has been grievously wounded in this earth. A person has been molested since they've been a child. Then there was no one there that heard them. They may have shared with an adult that they have been molested or beaten or abused, and then it snowballed from there. No one listened. Then they went and maybe were introduced to drugs or coerced into drugs, and they got into that whole scene. And see, that's this world can be the devil's playground, and so they were engaged and allured and manipulated into these crazy circumstances and situations throughout their whole life. Now they're 50 and they are wounded inside and out and can't see their way out. See, that person is a creator too. And that person will create experiences for themselves as well for others. We've heard, through studies, different clinical studies and stuff, and psychological studies, that those type of people usually perpetuate molestation or rape. Those kind of things is what I'm talking about. See, this is real life. All that stuff in the church, it was talking about real life. While our spirit is in this body, it was just taught to us as religion. That's why I bring it up. Again, it's not about trying to convert anybody, because I'm not a part of any particular religion. Yes, I still have the filter, and I like pulling the filter out every now and then, looking through it. And now, because I got another filter, I look through that one, and I got a couple others. But okay. So that person that's been through that hell and now is perpetuating hell upon our future, our current experiences and our future. Or that self-entitled person that is the person that says, well, I'm fine. Life has been enchanted for me, and I have mastered whatever field, and I don't believe that anybody that life has not been enchanted or has not mastered any particular field or discipline, they are not contributed to society, that they are not worthy even of life. So that particular person, so just kill them, just incarcerate them, just poison them, or whatever the case may be. Get rid of them. they are trash. That person, too, with that mindset and a strong ego foundation based on life never told them no, will move forward and create our current and upcoming experiences. They will contribute to the experiences that we have, and ultimately, the state of this physical world that ultimately affects and influences the state of our eternal soul. What do they call it? An unending story. It's a vicious cycle. And so, right now, we are at a place where we can, if we can awaken, I think we're so asleep. I do. I think we're so asleep and so separated from spirituality, not religion, spirituality. And we're so governed by man's laws and man's demands and not paying attention to the life and natural laws and things like that, that we are emotionally desensitized from what really matters. So, anyway, since we in that place, we all effed up. This is in closing, what are some of the ego defense mechanisms? Because it's going to protect itself because it is right or it wants to be in that state of being. And so I found, did I write down where I got it from? 17 ego defense mechanisms. Ego motivated justifications by www. I don't remember it being a video on YouTube called Yalla. I don't know. I will spell it. YALLA U, capital A, capital E, watch, V equals A, capital H, Y, capital A, 7, Y, E, M, capital I, capital R, S. So I'm going over it. I do not remember it being oh yeah, it was a video. It was just in writing. And so if you came and tuned in, I really appreciate you. Again, I like to share where my thoughts are and the things that I'm studying so that we are in tune, we're in sync, so that we can come to understand. Because again, what I was just saying is something more important, is bigger than ourselves. So we can't fathom. We've gotten to the place, I really believe, in this human form, we can't fathom what we're in the midst of. And for generations, people have been born and died and cannot fathom what is really taking place. And that's one of the reasons that the elitists, those that have a sense of entitlement, are capable of manipulating the population of the world. That's why there are so many starving people and homeless people and ill people and people that have been manipulated into circumstances and situations when they had no concept of what they were going into, nor understanding the penalties or the results that they would have to suffer due to being coerced into something. That's a whole nother video. So now I just want to talk about, in short, the ego defenses that exist, the ego defense mechanisms that we will see increasingly take place as we go through this battle of the link. Basically, the spirit manifesting into the physical, that blend right there, that link, the ego. 17, 1, denying reality, what a TI is, what it is right now. We are denying reality and we can't see it. I was just talking about it. We're not even phantoming what is really taking place. It's bigger then the reality of it is so big and broad. Um, and because it is tangible and intangible, we can't see. Our minds are not permitting us to comprehend. But astrological energy says divinity, whether good or bad, is allowing us to see now. So that would suggest that we have no more excuses. We will be held accountable for our works. That is motivated by our ego as well as our emotional state. Anyway, the second ego defense is fantasy. Fantasy lines up with the 12th house of Pisces, practicing escapism, drugs, alcohol, any form of escapism. You can meditate all day long as you're not dealing with reality. Fantasy, creating an illusion in your mind. But it never is a true manifestation upon the earth. You dealing in concepts or repression, which is talking about repressing one's emotions. You can't deal with it, so you're trying to prevent the pain by repressing one's emotions from entering into the consciousness. Now you being aware that you're afraid, not being aware that you are hurt. These are all defense mechanisms. So what am I saying? When divinity, whether good or bad, if they're in agreement, like in the case of Job and the story of Job, hey, that it's time for the people to awaken. It's time for them to understand where the source of their dilemma is coming from, where the source of their madness is coming from, where the source of their choice direction is coming from. And you begin to wake up and you begin to see and to become in tune with the world. And you, as an individual within the world, it can be fear, it can be shame. And the realization, especially of something that you or I, as an individual, may have partaken in, can be too much for us to handle. So the immediate thing is to shut the emotions down, not to even have to deal with it. Then the next one is rationalization, using using contrived explanations to conceal or disguise unworthy motives for someone's behavior. Rationalization. Example, when I talked about the young man that grew up through all the diversity of being molested and raped, then the drugs and the coercion, they grow up, they get to be 50, evaluation of their state of their the foundation of their ego is they basically a mess, and they perpetuate that by that pain and that hurt and the violation upon someone else currently or in the near future. And then when they get caught up, they say, well, it's because it happened to me. And this is the rationalizing one's ego's choices. See, his ego was damaged. The whole foundation was damaged, and he perpetuated it in our example. And then when got caught up, gave the explanation because all that happened to me. It must have been okay. Nobody stopped it. And so that is an ego defense rather than dealing. Remember, the first one before was repressing the emotions that hurt too bad. Hurt too bad. Can't deal with it. But it's possible that if that fellow had not repressed his emotions, even at 50, and went and got therapy, help, atonement, repenting, I don't know what you might need in that particular AA, went and just got all the help they could muster up. It is most likely, it's possible that that particular fellow would not have perpetuated that same crime. And what am I saying? Going back to the ego's foundation, the body or the frame of the ego, has been devastated, self-esteem devastated. And the little demon on the shoulder is whispering, id, the instinctual drive, desire, passion, unbridled passion. Do as thou wilt is the law of the land. Who is that, y'all? What a name. Mm-hmm, yeah. And if he had at that time said, enough is enough. Some people religious call drop it on your knees, you give over, harm yourself, whatever, or just got up and went to AA, got up and went to a therapist 4-5 times a week. If he needed prayer, if he needed meditation, went to work on himself. There's a possibility, at least he might not have been made whole, but it may have stopped him from perpetuating that particular crime. And that is what I'm saying about deciphering or determining which entity, whether devil or angel, one will listen to. And because you're the referee, your link, your ego is the referee that makes the final decision and expresses itself out into the world. That person could have chosen to seek help rather than to perpetuate crimes. And that choice, those choices, either choice, is a physical representation, going full circle, about who that person's master really is. The same stands true with the person that has mastery and power and authority, and they take that power, that knowing, that mastery, that ability, and all those accolades and skills. They could take it and be selfish and self-centered and self-righteous. But there are many people listening to a little demon and angel on the shoulder, devil saying, hey, you can make yourself a fortune, you can make this happen, you the Don Dada, you got it going on, you ought to dress like this and do like that. Also on that same individual shoulder, opposite shoulder, is the little angel saying, you know what? You have accomplished so much. Divine has allowed you to live and to have experiences, and you really, really grasp so much. And there are so many people out here that haven't been able to do that, or haven't had the opportunity, or they don't have the wit. And wouldn't it be nice if you started a nonprofit organization where you gathered some clothing or you fed the homeless? Well, that person who has a spirit that is linked up with a flesh body, that link is the referee and makes the final determination, devil or angel. To pick the angel and say, you know what, you're right. You're right. I got abundance in my life, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to help somebody else, or I'm going to spread it out in humanity. I got a portion to give. If it ain't nothing but a tenth, how they used to do it, a tenth to give to life outside of myself, to pay back, to pay it forward, or to contribute or whatever. That's what I'm going to do. Well, that person, that choice that they make is a manifestation of the master that they serve. Remember, it was saying you can't serve two masters. Not at all. You can't sit on the fence and be lukewarm. Not at this time, based on this astrological energy. It is that ciphering. Hey, what side of the fence are you on? Understanding now, based on the whole population and all that exists, the majority will have to be aligned with integrity and with goodwill for all, that kind of thing. At least an interest in us all, various cultures, nations, sizes, genders, being able to cohabitate in this physical plane. Have an interest, a common interest in sustaining that in a heavenly state, the majority. Then we will be entering into the narrow path, but that's difficult. Only way we can do that is first to wake up. We're not waking up fast enough, fully. Anyway, I'm just rambling and rambling and rambling. I've only done 4. Oh, wow. I'm about to hurry up and just run through them, y'all, in this live stream. Thank you for coming. Anyway, number 1, denial reality. 2, fantasy. And these are all, these are 17 ego defense mechanisms. 4, rationalization. 5, projection. Projection. How you feel about yourself. I got to hit projection because let's talk about self-righteous person, got it all going on or whatever the case may be. And somebody, they, from the inside, remember, we're going to know what's taking place in us. They know they may be selfish, not all, but may be selfish and greedy and contemptuous. But they will call that out on the another, say that to another, falsely accuse another of having those particular personality traits when actually it is them. But of course, not wanting to acknowledge who one really is, even though it's been revealed to them. 6, reaction formation. Although a person has bad feelings, actions, thoughts, desires, etc., they act by doing the opposite, more socially liked, accepted, uh, and expected behavior. An example of this, here we have it, is how about an example of a woman that has a child and they really don't have that motherly instinct? After having a child, they think, oh, it come into play, and it doesn't. And they have somewhat of a sense of guilt. They know it, but they won't make their choices based on those facts, that they're not motherly, that they're not bonding with the child. And some people, rather than just saying it to the world, maybe putting the child up for adoption, or finding another home or safe home, a home that can love the child and nurture it, no, that parent will keep the child and go into overdrive behavior of what is acceptable. I'm a loving mother, but there's really no emotional connection or depth there in that situation. And that is an example of reaction formation, which is one of the 17 ego defense mechanisms. Another example of that could be a person that may be racist, and they racism is not broadly accepted. And in order not to be looked or identified or singled out as a racist or someone that's biased in some way, when it comes up, when it's spotlighted, when it is noticed, and the person's called out about it, they say, no, 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 no. Look, see, my best friend is of another culture, or I do this and I give this, but down in their heart and their soul, they are biased in whatever way. And that is a prime example of what the astrological energy seems like it's saying. We are going to be aware personally of ourselves, the depths of ourselves. Those things that were hidden away in our psyche won't be hidden anymore. They are beginning to pour out. So get ready, pour out. That's why I'm doing this video. All that long-windedness, that's why I'm doing this video, so that we can be prepared. You have the right to do what you want. You can be egotistical or not. You can listen to the devil or not. You can serve whatever God you want or not. However, there is an outcome, which we've been banished from, or our consciousness about it has been washed away. We can't even conceive the possibility, really. But that's what it seems like it's saying in this first place is, hey, you're going to know who you are on a deep emotional and psychological level. Hey, you're going to know who you are on a spiritual level. Because remember, it's this physical and the spiritual overlapped. But we only look into the physical. Anyway, here I go again. The next one, number 7, is displacement. It's like kicking a dog. Kick the dog. You mad as hell, you go kick the dog, or you go kick the tree. Displacement. 8, emotional insulation, which is reducing ego involvement by protective withdrawal and passivity. You don't even want to be involved in it. You can't be engaged in it. Why? Because it is a threat to your ego. It's almost like saying you can't really do anything to stop whatever that thing is that is coming your way or attacking you or threatening you. You have no power over it except to remove yourself from it. Emotional insulation. The next, number 9, is intellectualization, not willing to fight or defend oneself, and insist that the unjust or attack be rendered in the favor of the attacker. Like whatever. Like you should know better than that. You should know better than that. It's like you can call somebody on something, they be like, that ain't what I do. I mean, even if they do it, they don't admit that they do it. They just, you should know better than that. Like their reputation precedes them. Example. Number 10, undoing. Undoing is not fighting or praying or hoping for a just outcome. Um, Not willing to tame oneself and puts the power in the hands of a force outside of itself. Like a person won't do anything, undo and totally ain't gonna do nothing. I brought up um, the conscious community and how, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's just about we all have our interests in whatever, and about any circumstance, situation, relationship, we have our own interests and our desires. But when a time of conflict or chaos comes, and it's time to stay in, some people, defense mechanism wise, practice this defense mechanism of undoing. They won't even do anything. They won't stay in the defense for themselves. They wait for anything else to make the final decision. That's deep. The next one, 11th, is regression, retreating back to an earlier developmental time, younger age, less mature, less responsibility, that kind of stage, or going back to a more I can't think of the word, just a better time in life. 12 is identification, which increases one's self-worth by affiliating someone else in comparison. Identification, you don't feel good about yourself. Some people, what am I talking about? I am talking about what we're going to see an increase in. And what we're going to see is an increase in ego defense mechanisms across the border in people. Why? Because we're being called to either repent, change our ways, because or to heal our the foundation to the form of our ego and our self-esteem. And some people won't want to, or it's too scary, or it's overwhelming, or they won't see it. They understand that they have an issue or a problem, but they still won't deal with it. And these are the responses or actions they will take. This is a list of actions they will take in order to defend their ego, to say, it's okay the way I am. I don't have to change. I don't have to look at it deeper. It's in my face now, but I don't have to. You've mirrored something back to me, but I don't have to. I can just project it right back onto you, or I can rationalize it, or just deny it altogether. Here, on identification, a person that may really not have high self-esteem, but they may break others down in order to build themselves up, or associate themselves with someone else that has power in order to build themselves up as well. The next thing is number 13 is overcompensation, which is covering up perceived weaknesses by emphasizing a desired characteristic or making up for frustrations by over gratification in another. Just do what they call it today, you doing too much. Like I said, my kids be like, Mama, you doing the most. Yeah, doing too much. So I guess I am guilty of overcompensation. Okay. Number 14, acting out. Engaging in antisocial or excessive behavior without regard to the negative consequences as a way of dealing with emotional stresses. Now, many people do act out, but that's something that I see very common in young adults. Act out in fighting, or they might go get the tattoos, just acting out. And it is about defending their ego or how they feel. A person can be very sad and suffering from depression. This is not all, but some. This is what I've seen. They may wear all black and, get tats in the craziest places. It is the acting out. It is in defense of their ego. What is the state of their ego? Really underneath there is shattered or wounded or fearful, but they won't confess it. They won't get the help, or maybe they just don't know how to express themselves. They're so young. They don't know how to articulate it. They don't know if someone can help it. They can't even make sense of it. Again, they're so young. But what they will do acting out is, again, they go wear all the black and the leather, and they cut half the hair off, and they, tat up in some of the craziest places. That is a ego defense mechanism. The next one is 15, which is splitting, viewing oneself as all bad or all good without integrating positive or negative qualities into the evaluation, reacting to others in an or a none manner, rather than considering the full range of their qualities. Now, I find that interesting. I had found a little quote. I just happened to see a quote that my daughter had scribbled somewhere, and I said, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to read it. It says, and I don't know where she got it from, who wrote it. I don't know if she made it or not, but it says, relative to the splitting, which is viewing oneself as bad or good without integrating positive and negative. I quote this little poem, whomever it belongs to. They say change is everything, but really it's nothing. Now, that's interesting because that's what I'm talking about, the change that is required to take place. But this point, whoever mentality hurts someone else, it says it's contrary to what I'm picking up. That's what I'm saying. If, just say hypothetically, this little short poem is by my daughter, then it is the mentality of people in the physical at this time. She's a representation of a people or a line of thought. And it's running contrary to what is unfolding in the astrological energies. I'm saying there's a difference. Anyway, they say change is everything. In this case, it is. We need the majority. But really, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's not required. Okay. Oh, let me just read what I'm saying. They say change is everything, but it's really nothing. We change to be perfect. But the worst of us is what makes us perfect. Interesting. I thought that was so interesting because it does, again, astrological energies that I interpreted do require change. It requires coming to grip with who we are on an eternal level, how being our souls incarnating to this physical body, interacting with everything outside of us in this physical realm has impacted and influenced us, creating a foundation that builds the body of our self-esteem and our ego, and then we go out and perpetuate that into the world. And for the most part, I was saying that we who, the world, humanity, is on a quick descent into hell. And if we don't want to slide through that wide gate into hell and destruction, then we have to make some changes. That's Pluto in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn. Now, what else is it? Saturn, Pluto, and something else. In Capricorn, it is about change. But it's not just about change in this physical world. It is also about change in the spiritual world as well, because these two existences are living simultaneously and are blended and linked together. Anyway, so change is important. And it says we change to be perfect. Right, exactly. But not perfection in the context of what we call perfect. No one's perfect. But it's this realization about who we are and how we are affecting and influencing in each other. And based on if that influence is improper, if it is disruptive, if it is chaotic, if it is disagreeable, then we are creating that hell-like state in this earth that is vicious cycle, unending story, perpetuating the demise of our own souls. So the perfection is in understanding the cycle. It is not about being perfect, but it is about pulling back from some things. It is about repenting or humbling yourself. It is about understanding that it's all of us on this globe together, and we can destroy it. We can destroy the water source. We can destroy the foods. We can gut it out for all its natural resources. Guess what? We're not getting off this bad boy. And everything that takes place here is going to affect us past our existence in this physical world. That is all the perfection that is being asked of us in the astrological energy. We change to be perfect, but the worst of us is what makes us perfect. This is true. That was also part of the astrological energy. I found that was a pretty deep little point, because the negative part of us is what makes us perfect, but it still is this level of integrity relative to what we may call the more negative charge within us, like impulsiveness, our passions, our desires, our urges. They must be contained. They have their place too. And it takes all of that to make us whole, to make us, once again, perfect, but not perfect in a concept in which we romanticize perfection as. Not that kind. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, let me close up. That was splitting. Now, 16 and 17. 16 is sublimation, channeling frustrated sexual energy into substitute activities. You know how they say, if it gets to you, then take a cold shower. If it gets to you, go work it off, go cut the grass, or go box, or something like that. And so that is another ego mechanism defense. And finally, 17, fixation. Fixation. What is fixation? Which is the 17th ego defense mechanism. It is attaching oneself in an unreasonable or exaggerated way to some person or arresting emotional development on a childhood or adolescent level. Just getting fixated on something and not letting it go. It almost seems like, again, seems like identification, where it almost you forsake yourself and become another or other entity. That's interesting. Well, anyway, those were the 17 defense mechanisms that we will be seeing, I believe, an increase of from here on out. And why is that? Because it seems to me that universe is asking us to grow up. We're going to be held accountable for our deeds and our works. But first, we have to recognize or come to understand, to acknowledge, to see what is brewing beneath us, and how the eruption, the pouring out of those emotions, whether good or bad, are expressed into the world through our fabulous self-expression and ego, creating our current and upcoming events. At closing, I like to say this. I like to point this out, that Hawaii and Kilauea, I believe, and have had some major volcanic action, and I believe that is something actually going on the Pacific Ocean's floor, and it is between, I know, based on astrological studies from February, that it starts at Easter Island and it continues toward Hawaii. Now, what I'm understanding from my studies is that the astrological energies, when I was studying it, showed that was taking place now would happen. And it did. I did that reading in February, and here we are at May, and now destruction is pouring out. And that's what I want to point out. It's pouring out. The lava is representation of in the earth is happening. That's what I'm trying to say. In the earth, it is happening, and it's erupting, and it's pouring out, and it's like never before. Some of these people have lived in this location their lifetime, and the volcanoes may not have gone off, at least to this extent. And I think they were like 100 or so years, whatever it's been. I didn't really look at that, but uh, it's a foreshadowing of what mankind is dealing with, um, going through. The same way the volcano has erupted, and the quaking and the shaking, we can parallel that particular natural energy to what's taking place in us. Many of us are shivering on the inside because of these compressed energies, these compressed emotions, whether it's biases that we want to live out in, or it's pains that we have that we want to address and we want to act out into the world. That explosion of the volcano is again um, a representation of what's taking place with humans in this earth. And understand that just like that volcano, this is what we can't see, is destroying the land and is displacing many of the people. The same thing is happening to humanity. It's beginning. And that's, I wanted to say one more thing, and it's about how Uranus is moving into Taurus. First, it was in the Aries, and now I think it's going by June. I think it'll be in the first degree of Taurus. And it's about innovation, it's about change, it's about enlightenment, about what you value. And a biased individual values what they value, why they value it, and they may have the natural propensity to defend it to any means because life has never told them no, their ego is strong. Or a person could again, you have your own choice. You can do as you like. But heck, I don't forget what I was going to say. But what I'm bringing? I bring that volcano up because it is a physical representation. Nothing. What I'm realizing in the course of our lives, in the course of my life, nothing has just happened without any forewarning. It's not just the stars that foretell the tale. Um, Hawaii, Kilauea, and the activities over there are forewarning us what is taking place. I just tried, gave my best attempt to describe, give us a heads up about what is being asked of us. Um, and then another thing that also, I'm just throwing this out there for anybody that wants to do their own research relative to life and us in the life, is that even those Greek gods and the myths and the fables and the folklores, what's taking place, it seems as though it's always been known. Because you can play back. Because even when I was doing the research, astrological studies and saw the upcoming or the pending happenings over in that area, it also talked about I think an ancestral or Princess Pele and her whole family and kinsfolk. This is folklore, Hawaiian folklore. And it talked about the catastrophic events that would take place in that area Only issue I had with I didn't know how to do the timing. Um, but anyway, what am I saying? That there is, if we want to wake up, there is a lot of information that exists. And it just takes for us to take the time to parallel what we've been taught. In this live stream, I use the religious doctrines that I was taught, and I looked at things through that lens. I've also looked at this topic through the lens of astrology, and then also the lens through the, like in that case, the Hawaiian Hawaiian ancestral folklores to come up with the truth and to predict or foresee outcomes. What am I saying? Trying to say is that every step of the way in the course of history of humanity, there was someone who was awakened, enlightened. What does that mean? They could see the patterns, or they picked up on the information left by prior generations, and like reading the stuff in the pyramids, the artifacts, and doing studying the architecture. All of these things have been clues to reminders of what has been and clues to what will be. And so, what am I saying? All of this that I've talked about is me deciphering the clues of what is to be and beginning to project what will be. Anyway, I thank you for coming to Can Angels Fly and, dealing with me during this live stream. Until next time, bye. You say, what? I know I just been running my mouth. Let me look at this. Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, okay. I'm just going to read all of this and then I'm going to sign out of here. And this is the new, it just got a button right there that says end live stream. So it shouldn't be hard. Let's see. Hello from the UK. Well, hello, Jan. Fragments. Let's see. Jan Lewis. And see, now that I'm reading the chat at the end, I don't know what part of the information I was on, but I can see where it was hand says, I know what part he was commenting on. It says, I think Trump is a Jesus. And then he says Trump equals Jesus. And then he says, support Trump. He's our president and last savior. All right. Contributions. Mel Mac says, totally understand the churches are all closing and people will not need to go, will still need to go somewhere. So true, because again, awakening is, especially, I think it's going to be it's like somewhat of a mass awakening in comparison to time. I'm doing times as in eons, so it's going to be a mass awakening and people are going to suffer some type of psychosis. I would think, again, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, very little studies there, but based on my experiences and what I've seen and what I've been through, I can kind of, infer what may happen. So anyway, and Jane Lewis says, oh, that's my life. Very not accepted by my family in anything I did and do. And finally, SP says, I love you when you say, ride with me. Ride the wave with me. Thank you. Anyway, for coming here to Can Angels Fly and ride the wave with me as we discover how to identify who your master is. And it is based on your ego, fabulous self-expression, your needs. Until next time, bye.